guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on Lady Clementine by Marie Benedict. Lady Clementine by Marie Benedict tells the remarkable story of the wife of Winston Churchill. Often just seen in the shadow of her husband, Clementine Churchill was essential in helping her husband in all political matters, while quietly going through her own struggles and sense of self-worth and ideas of motherhood and being a woman. Marie Benedict pulls Clementine from the shadows and fleshes out a woman who is just as intelligent as her husband and just as important to the future of Great Britain. So last year I previously read Marie Benedict's The Only Woman in the Room, which was focused on actress Hedy Lamarr. So yeah, when I found out that Marie Benedict was doing another book this year focused on Clementine Churchill, the wife of Winston Churchill, I was like, hell yes, I definitely gotta go pick this up. Because I did. I really enjoyed The Only Woman in the Room, and I really enjoyed this book as well. And that's two books so far by Marie Benedict focused on two women that I know them by name, but then when I sit and think about it, I know absolutely nothing about them. So yeah, very much like the Hedy Lamarr book, Lady Clementine is the same. I really enjoyed learning a lot about Clementine Churchill and her function and her role, and that she, even though she was often kind of in the shadows of you know, the shadow of her husband, the shadow of kind of all these grander big things going on around her, the thing is, she was kind of quietly in the background doing little things and really making a difference when, you know, when people weren't really noticing the changes and differences she was making, but yet she was very, very vital to some of these things. So I really loved learning about Clementine Churchill, because I mean, I'm not like an expert on all things Winston Churchill, but yeah, I feel like I definitely know quite a lot about Winston Churchill, but yeah, nothing about Clementine Churchill. And so it was really fun to kind of get down into the nitty-gritty of things about her that was kind of shocking and surprising sometimes. This book is what I would call traditional, standard historical fiction, and I definitely don't mean that in a bad way, because I mean, you know, every so often I do love traditional, standard historical fiction. And what I mean by traditional and standard historical fiction, what I do mean by that exactly, like a book that's like a greatest hits, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? This book reads very much like a greatest hits of the life and times of Clementine Churchill. It doesn't read like a textbook, because I don't want it to sound like that it sounds like a textbook. It never reads like a textbook, but it does kind of have that feel almost of, you know, kind of hitting these various different bullet points and flying through events at like a rapid pace and a rapid speed. And sometimes it's like, I feel like there's some story in there that could be told at greater length, but yeah, Marie Benedict never really stays at a certain point for very long. What this book does, it flies very quickly through the life of Clementine Churchill, starting with her marriage to Winston and pretty much ending at the very end of World War II. So yeah, everything is just kind of sped through very rapidly, because what Marie Benedict is kind of really wanting to strongly focus on, it does seem, is World War II and Clementine's role and importance during the war. And that is the unfortunate thing when you do read a book like this, when it is the greatest hits, essentially, on the life and times of somebody. Yeah, I think a lot of books are like that. Authors, when they're trying to tell the life story of somebody over the course of many, many decades, and yeah, it's not a very big book, you know, yeah, a lot of times these types of historical fiction books do just kind of come across that way, as, you know, just kind of picking the highlights and kind of going with it and moving rather rapidly through the chain of events, if you will. Churchill. So the book, let's kind of start from the beginning here. The book does open in 1908. We get the marriage of Clementine and Winston with a few little scatterings of flashbacks about how they met and whatnot. And then it's just a whirlwind of events as they get married. Each of their children is born. And it's kind of through all of these beginning chapters before we do hit World War II and whatnot. And yeah, we're kind of here stuck in World War I for the time being. It's kind of during all of this stuff as the children are being born and the events of World War I. It's here that Clementine, we are seeing her struggling with her sense of self-worth, her sense of place, her role and function, within her marriage with Winston Churchill, and yeah, how her role with her husband, how that often kind of conflicts with her role as a mother as well. And the great thing about this book, Marie Benedict does not shy away from the fact that Clementine Churchill was not a very good mother. She was kind of a bad mother. But that's kind of also, as seen in some of like the author notes at the very end of the book, it's kind of something Marie Benedict was kind of wanting to talk about as well with this book. Just, comparing the idea of motherhood kind of, then versus now. Because motherhood is a completely different thing now than what it was like back in the day in the early 1900s, because women often didn't really have a role in the lives of raising their children. Their children, especially if they were wealthy, privileged women, a lot of times their children were raised by nannies and governesses or sent off to boarding schools or whatever, and so they don't really have much of a function, and that's kind of what happens here with Clementine Churchill in relation to all of her children. As the novel does progress, there's definitely an estrangement there. She doesn't even know or understand her own children, and the character, there is a nice growth of character there over the course of the novel, because Clementine, she knows there's an estrangement, she knows that she's a bad mother, but that's kind of the growth of her character, is that she does acknowledge that, and she tries to make amends wherever she can to try to get to know them. And as I mentioned, her role as mother is often in conflict with her role as kind of being the wife of a politician, because Clementine, she's very intelligent and outspoken, and she doesn't want to sit in the background and be quiet and numb to everything going on around her. She wants to have some sort of say and role. And yeah, we quickly find out in this novel that even though Winston Churchill is obviously at the forefront of everything kind of going on, she's in the background, and she is there for Winston's, just his needs, his emotional needs especially. She's there for words of encouragement and advice when he needs it. And yeah, she's often there looking over his speeches, some of his greatest speeches. Marie Benedict is kind of there saying that Clementine had a role in some of those greatest speeches, that she was there kind of proofreading and editing and kind of fixing maybe little words here or there, and how he should voice the speeches to give as much impact as possible, to be memorable through the ages and whatnot. So once you get through kind of that first chunk of the book, which is very rapidly gone through, because you go through the marriage and the children and World War I, and then all of a sudden here you are at the last half of the book at World War II, and yeah, the last half is pretty much solely focused, very tightly focused on the events of World War II and Clementine's role and function there, and all of the really great things that she did that I was definitely not aware of. And I'm assuming Marie Benedict, that a lot of the stuff that is kind of being said in this, I'm assuming this is all historically accurate and whatnot. And yes, some interesting things that I found out about Clementine, what she did during World War II. While her husband is off doing his things and whatnot, she's kind of in the background making sure that like women are involved in the war effort, because yeah, this is a time when Great Britain has gotten into the war and all the men are out at the fronts, and so there's not very men in England at the time. So yeah, all of these traditional jobs that tend to go to men, there's no men to fill those job roles. So Clementine is strongly urging the importance of women and encouraging women to get into the workforce and do these traditionally male-dominated jobs and whatnot, especially like anything with weapons and and whatnot. Just any supplies, you know, any supplies that will help the war effort. Women are helping to do that, and Clementine is responsible for getting women more active in the war effort. And yeah, not only getting women more involved, Clementine also had a lot to do with getting better shelters during the Blitz, because the shelters initially at the start of the Blitz were kind of pretty bad, and people were in really degrading circumstances, and I guess she was really outspoken trying to get better shelters and conditions so people weren't, you know, put in these horrible conditions. And yeah, she was also very vital to, you know, getting like charitable funds to help raise money for Great Britain during the war, and also Russia during the war. So yeah, Clementine had a vastly huge important role during the war that was behind the scenes of everything that her husband was doing, since he was, you know, focusing on more kind of the other aspects going on. So yeah, I really loved Marie Benedict's Lady Clementine. I found it really intriguing and engaging, though it did, like I mentioned, it read like a greatest hits of the life of Clementine Churchill. That didn't really bother me. I still found it fascinating, and I felt like I was learning a lot of stuff about this woman that I previously didn't know very much about. And it was just nice to read about this woman who was very heavy, you know, into politics, you know, because during this time period it was more traditional that the wife of a politician, she needed to be seen and not heard, you know. So yeah, she taken a much more active role and really doing a lot of really important things during World War II especially. So yeah, if you love British history, if you want to learn more about Winston Churchill's wife, Clementine, I definitely recommend this. I think you might enjoy it. So you guys, that's it for this review. In the comments below, have you guys read this book? Do you plan on reading it? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.